G'day everyone, how's it going? My name is G-Train and welcome. So today I want to talk about, is 2025 an actual return to form? So obviously I use that term tongue-in-cheek, and the reason being, last year and early this year, that term was thrown around and used by tons of unscrupulous, non-ethical journalists describing games that they were a return to form, and that every single review by these piece of shit journos said the exact same thing and copy and pasted it. And for anyone in the know, all these games sucked. If you have a working brain and an IQ above 2, you'll know that they were absolutely terrible. So my question is 2025 an actual return to form for games and the gaming industry? Well, me being the pessimistic person that I am, I'm going to say no, but we're on the right bloody track, finally. So what the hell am I talking about? So if you're a regular gamer and you're on social media a lot, or things like YouTube, Facebook, etc., you should have heard about at least one, if not many, of the absolute disasters and dumpster fires last year of games. Games that completely, utterly crashed out, terrible in sales, flopped completely, and how many respective companies were shut down as a result of these terrible bloody games. Now, I'm not saying 2024 was a complete write-off. There was definitely some gems last year for sure. Unfortunately, a lot of the good in the year was completely overshadowed by how much garbage that there was, and the extreme push for certain themes, ideologies, and bullshit in games that nobody asked for. Well, none of the actual gamers asked for anyway. Things like the uglification of all female characters, the demasculinization and feminization of male characters, DEI and inclusive checklist 5 miles long of 10 dozen different things that had to be included in the game for no other purpose than just to be included in the game. To be like, hey, look at me, I'm inclusive. Fucking retards. But anyway, I won't prattle on about that for too long. But yeah, there was a long list. Concord, Dustborn, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, Dragon Age The Failguard, Unknown 9 Awakening. Yeah, Unknown, very bloody fitting title for that game. Star Wars Outlaws. You get the picture. So, with what was mostly a train wreck of 2024, how's 2025 shaping out? Well, thankfully, quite a lot better. The year started off pretty good. Unfortunately, there were still some turds in there, but that couldn't be avoided because they'd been in production for so bloody long that they had no choice but just to eventually come out. Talking about you, Assassin's Creed Shadows. Oh, and Avowed. But anyway. But we've actually seen like a really strong lineup. So aside from the aforementioned crap, we had some really great contenders early on in the year. You had Monster Hunter, minus the fact that it ran like dog shit even on top NPCs, but there's a good game in there. Kingdom Come, Deliverance 2. And you had your big known titles like Doom the Dark Ages. But then surprisingly, a bunch of stuff just came out of nowhere. Like you had the indie game Schedule 1. That had more concurrent player count than pretty much all the AAA games. You had Oblivion Remastered Shadow drop out of bloody nowhere, which was absolutely incredible. And Oblivion was one of my favourite games of all time. Stellar Blade re-released on PC and Steam did incredibly well, and then my personal favourite so far and 100% Game of the Year nominee was Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And not just Game of the Year, that's one of my favourite games of all time. And if that doesn't win Game of the Year, Soundtrack of the Year, and a bunch of others, I call absolute bullshit. Although we all know the Game Awards are turned into absolute joke, with Sony buying them out for the win last year. Just recently we had Death Stranding 2. I haven't played yet, but I've heard really good things. Unfortunately, we've still got some turds on the horizon. Again, like what I mentioned before. You know, these games have just been in production for so long now, it's too late to reverse course. Sadly, one of those will be Ghost of Yotai, which I'm really disappointed about because one of my favourite games of all time is Ghost of Tsushima. And if you need proof, just look at my shelf up there. But anyway, I know I've sounded like I've been very negative, and yeah, I have been, because I've been gaming all my life, and seeing like the last year or so with the systematic destruction of a lot of companies, games, and beloved IPs by these retard activists who don't know how to create anything good. I don't know. The only thing that they're good at is destroying things. Like, seriously, none of them have any creative talent whatsoever. I can't comprehend it. It's nice to see that this year we've been in that shit spot and slowly starting to come back up. And I say hopefully we'll see less of that and more of what actually makes games good and what gamers actually want. Not what the imaginary made up modern audience wants, who never shows up for their games. If they were such a big bloody audience, then all the games last year would have sold millions of copies, and we wouldn't be having this discussion. So hopefully now, I know not everyone, but at least a lot of places have realised that everything that was being sold and pressured and forced into games over the last few years is not what gamers want, is not popular, and does not sell. Do I think everyone's going to change their mind and reverse course? No, not at all. Sadly, we don't live in a perfect world, and if you look at the history, most of these companies would rather die on that hill than admit that they're wrong and try and change. These companies would rather bankrupt themselves and have to lay off all their staff rather than just being like, nah, no one wants this. And then that was another trend, and it's still been going on up until recently. Game companies and developers insulting their fans, insulting their player base and their customers, calling you chuds and incels, or telling you, just don't buy it. If you don't like it, just don't buy it. Yeah, good message, happily. The second you say that, I ain't buying your shit. Call me a chud or an incel? Pfft. Ooh. Sticks and stones. I'm not going to buy your game also. However, then you go the other end, and again, we'll see more of it this year, of companies or game designers or publishers that are actually listening to their fans or actually respect their fans, which should be pretty normal, you would think, because in any business, if you insult your customers, they're not going to want to buy your product. So I'm very unclear as to who thought that was a good idea and how they thought that was going to sell them more games. Like, apparently absolute morons run these companies. More leftists, same thing. But I'll give you a few random examples of companies that listen. Like, you've got the devs of Lords of the Fallen. I know that was released well before what I'm talking about, but they are still updating that game now. They just did a massive update early this year, and all of these have been free. They've listened to good criticism from fans on their game. They even did a poll about bringing back body type A and B, which blows my mind that A, that ever had to be done in the first place, and B, the retards on Reddit who had a problem with it. Companies like Grinding Gear Games that make Path of Exile 1 and 2, like, sit down and do interviews with streamers and let them ask questions from the fans about the game and make suggestions about things to make the games better. Like, as soon as I see developers like that, I'm going to buy their game and I'm going to support them. Why? Not only do I want them to make more games, I want to support the game makers and developers that actually give a shit about their fans and don't insult you and call you names. They're the guys that are getting my money every time. There were still some absolute gems in 2024. You had Balatro, Final Fantasy Rebirth, Silent Hill 2 Remake was pretty good. Shadow of the Erdtree, even though it was only a DLC, I still bloody loved it, for the most part. Metaphor ReFantasio, just to give you some examples. So just to point out, certain elements and themes don't make a game bad. Like, for example, people go, oh, like, the word woke's used a lot. And then people will come back to this argument with like, oh, but Baldur's Gate 3 is woke, and that's a really good game. No, it has woke elements, sure, but it is not a woke game. Everything in that game is by choice. Nothing in that game is forced into it. And you go back a bit further and say the same about Cyberpunk. That game is full of those kind of themes, but none of it's forced, and it's just a really well made, well done game. Like the best characters in that game, the side characters in that game, like Julie, are gay, and I fucking love it. So there is nothing wrong with certain elements or themes in games. It's how it's done, and whether it's been forced or shoehorned into the game to tick off the massive DI checklist that gets longer and longer every bloody week. Now, these games were bad because they were forcing ideologies, forcing opinions, forcing diversity into the games, forcing ugly characters, ugly people, and the people themselves that created them have no talent. The more games, I'll use the example again, like Expedition 33, that just go back to the basics of just trying to make the best game possible, not caring about how many gay characters are in the game, how many black people are in the game, or Asians. Well, actually, no, being black or Asian isn't even counted as diversity anymore, but you have to be black and gay, or Asian and gay, or whatever, to be counted as diverse now. That's how far the spectrum has gone. But games that simply just focus on things like gameplay, optimization, fun, interesting stories, interesting characters. Like, Clair Obscur had all of those from the get-go. My first playthrough of the game, it was like 0 bugs. How many AAA games are released nowadays and they're a bug-filled mess and require patch after patch after patch? Yet they somehow, with their tiny little team, managed to release a polished, near-perfect game. And I'll use the other extreme end of the example of indie games. Like last year you had Balatro, and then this year you had Schedule 1. Schedule 1 made by like one dude basically. And that game is so simple, yet it's just fun. The other issue of forcing these ugly characters in the games, or having like character creators where they're just completely androgynous. Like, I don't know about you, but one of the whole reasons I play games is a form of relaxation and escapism from real world. No one wants to play games, or at least very few people want to play games to replicate being in the real world. Otherwise, just go and be in the... Why bloody bother? And I'm not sure, even if you were ugly or whatever in real life, why the hell you then want to play as someone ugly in a video game? Where's the escapism in that? Like, outside of the people that make the real abomination meme-looking characters for jokes and for laughing games, most people, whether you're a girl or a guy, make attractive-looking characters. The fact that that is somehow considered not true or wrong all this time is just, yeah. So like I said earlier in the video, I'm definitely very pessimistic, and just overall the way entertainment and media have been going over the last few years, and the insane crazy world in general. But with some of the recent shifts we've been seeing and some of the trends that are emerging, I've definitely got a little bit more optimism than I had 6 months or a year ago. So yeah. Anyway, bit of a rant, but also hopefully some optimism for the future and what's to come in gaming. Hopefully we're going to be seeing more of what makes gaming great. Anyway, that'll do it from me. Hang in there, guys. Keep gaming and keep supporting the games that are good and actually are listening to you and don't treat you like shit. Alright, well, if you hung around this long and you liked the video, or you weren't offended by it, consider leaving a like or dropping a sub. That'd be great. And with that, I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Catch you later.